Hello, people. Another win, another week. So let's get into it and let's just introduce everyone first. So the usual gang. So George, CK, and Z are here, and we're joined today again by Nick, NS Football. Say hi, Nick, and introduce yourself again, mate.
Yeah. Hi, people. I'm a big Arsenal fan. I came on here after the Leeds game. I had a great time. So, yeah, the lads were kind enough to let me in once again. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Right, cool. Just if you are new here, you can just share the link if you can, please, because that would be good just to get more people in. Hope everyone's doing well, and it's been a good weekend for Arsenal, so let's get into it. So 2-0, Z was right, so I'll let him have his first thoughts on the game. What do you think about the game, Z?
Yeah, man. Look, we did exactly exactly everything that I wish we would do. Look, start quickly, pass the ball quick, and you know what, get the early goals in, because once you get the early goals in, that's where the game is set. And after we got those early goals in, people say we dropped off, or we were tired. I feel like it was a tactical plan by Arteta. Just allowing Vardy to not have the spaces, and we kind of we did that very well. And yeah, I don't want to go too much into it because I let the big guys do it, but overall it was a very, very good performance from me. I feel like Arteta did exactly what he wanted, and before the game he even said it. He was aware of the spaces that Leicester leaves, and he's gonna try and exploit that. And look, he did that very well. So yeah.
All right, so just to go in just before George and ZK discuss what mean by the lack of space. So in the second half, so as we all know, Jamie Vardy, he loves to run in behind. He's very good off the shoulder. He's very good with tons of space. So what we did is we dropped our block further and further back. And if you look at that game, if you look back in that game, you can see our defensive line is basically on the penalty box, and that's so that Jamie Vardy couldn't just make those runs behind. And I think that was crucial in that second half, because if you give Jamie Vardy space, he'll hurt you. George, what did you think of the game, and what were your initial thoughts on the game?
I think so overall, I don't think I had quite as an emotional connection because I couldn't catch it live. Like for me, it was really crazy in terms of the time difference. Like it's mad when you have early kickoffs over here. And so for me, like I had to watch a playback on at least the first half, so I couldn't catch the immediate reaction. And for me, I basically caught the worst portion of the game live. And for me, I use that in brackets because I just feel as though I agree with Z. I think it was a lot more of a tactical switch in terms of reducing the space that Vardy's going to have after going 2-0 up from very good play and a very good press. And so for me, as opposed to us kind of going down in terms of quality, I felt it was a very much a tactical switch from us in order to control the game and control space. And, we decided to use it through space as opposed to possession. And for me, that's just as important. I never felt worried during the game in the second half personally. I think there were a couple good chances, to be fair to Leicester, that, they did get out because they're a quality team and they can do that to you. But on the whole, I was just very happy with what we did on Samare. I think it was exactly what we highlighted in the preview. He was going to be very important to Leicester, and we basically had Lacazette, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the build up, really, but and in our press. But we really focused on isolating him and kind of exploiting that space that Yuri Tielemans was going to do. So I felt that we did it really, really well. Again, another example and sample of us beating a back three team. I think that's going to become a strength kind of going forward. And so for us, I just felt as though that we kind of got a lot of questions answered on the whole. Can this team produce consistency against really good transition midfields? Yes, they can. Can they perform against back three? I think this is really good at this point. Like we've got a couple sample, and like anything to add to the winning feeling right now is just really, really good, because I feel commentators of, the game are slowly starting to recognize, hey, look, something's there after bantering us mercilessly. So I think on the whole, very happy with the first 20 minutes. I thought the press was immense. And, I just really like what that could say going forward. And I just think that maybe us dropping off, I'm noticing it a lot more. And I don't think it's 100% tactical. Some of it's fitness. I don't think that this squad is ready to go for a full 90 minutes. We don't have the midfield quality to sustain that kind of pressure for 90 minutes quite yet. But what it's showing us is we have an ability to turn on and off our ability to control a match. And I think that's going to be invaluable. And of course, Aaron Ramsdale just had an absolutely immense game. So yeah, really, really happy with what I've seen.
All right, cool. So I'll go to CK before going to Nick, and then just basically just go after Nick straight away.
Oh, well, for me, I didn't catch the first half. I was sleeping. I was so annoyed, but I didn't catch the first half, so I woke up 2-0 up thinking we'll dominate the game. Then I looked at the stats, and Leicester had maybe 55% possession. And I looked at the narrative after the game from other fans was that we got dominated and got lucky from the win. And I watched back the first half, and I thought after the first 20 minutes, we just decided to sit off, and you could win the game from 2-0 up away from home if you limit Jamie Vardy, who's their biggest threat against us and always has been, limit his biggest threat, which is his pacing behind. And I thought after the 20-minute mark, even though we could have contested the game and maybe made it more of a transition game and maybe leak some goals and concede, we decided to shut up shop and trust your block and your goalkeeper, because we did defend well, but eventually when you have players like Maddison, Barnes, Vardy moving around you for 70 minutes, they're gonna get a chance. And we trusted our keeper this time to make the save. I thought it was impressive that we didn't concede for the 70 minutes. Even though I was never really scared we would, but it was impressive that we decided we're not going to concede and went through with it. Rather, because in the past when we tried that, you'd see us, a player make a mistake in build-up or something like that, and there was just none of it. So it was impressive, even though the numbers make it seem as if Leicester should have won by far. But if you look at the XG, for example, we were winning by far until Maddison's free kick and then Evans' rebound. So if you look at the numbers in depth properly, you see that up until the 45th minute, 43rd minute, we were by far the better team, and then we just sat off. But yeah, that's my overview on the game on the weekend.
Yeah, so for me, so for me, I obviously there was a lot of discussion about the fact that we sat off after going 2-0 up, and especially in the late stage of the first half, as well as the beginning of the second half. I mean, obviously everyone would prefer if we would just beat them 5-0 and just never sat off, but like it's not like Norwich at home or anything. It's Leicester who were in the top four for like 95% of the season last year, same with the year before. They're just a really good team. We went there, we got a 2-0 lead, and we did a great job in terms of killing off the game. I don't really think it was sustained pressure as a result of us not building up and not pressing. I think it was a tactical decision for us to drop off, and I mean that as a good thing, not that we gave them too much respect or anything. I think it was the correct decision, precisely because Leicester are a dangerous team against a high line, and we've been hurt against them that way a lot. If you remember last season at the Emirates when we lost 1-0, we kept pushing on until the end. Well, it was 0-0, so it made sense, but that's how we conceded of a turnover, and then Vardy against the high line in transition. So when they're chasing the game, they're not really the kind of team that have they don't have a squad packed with like technical creators that can create things out of nothing. Obviously, they're very dangerous from set pieces, as we saw with Maddison. But overall, I thought there were a lot of players at Leicester that they couldn't really do anything against our settle block because they simply don't have the quality. Like we'll see later when we go through our press, we completely ignored their wide center backs in the build-up because they really had no ability to progress or threaten our goal. Same with their wing backs. They really didn't threaten us at all. So I think the decision to sit off was correct. Obviously, there were some moments which I kind of worried and that was in the beginning of the first half. But for once, which Mikel was proactive with his change to bring on Odegaard instead of Lacazette, and I'm happy for that, because Mikel has been criticized a lot in the past, by me included, for not making changes quickly enough. So yeah, I mean, overall, I can't really complain for a lot.
No, the one thing I just wanted to add on there, Nick, is like, I think Rodgers had a very synonymous performance with Mikel and Chelsea. And so what I mean by that is Rodgers saw the blueprint for Villa, but what we did with a back three and a 3-4-1-2. And, you know, it was horrific in terms of what we did to Villa. And he sat there and did the exact same thing. And then at halftime, changed system, bringing on Barnes. And, you know, he basically tried to go man for man to add some creativity in there, because we were killing their press. And for me, Mikel responded by going into a low block to cut off the space, because they brought on two creators to try to stretch the game. And that was a response to Rodgers' plan and basically succession that I pooched everything here. And, you know, I started horrifically wrong, and he had to change system at halftime. And so that's what I didn't really see on the timeline. And I was surprised, because, you know, Mikel was criticized for this very same thing with Chelsea, when we didn't do the exact same buildup that we could have done at Stamford Bridge the year before. And everyone thought, you know, there's space on the wings. Why are we giving them space in terms of Chelsea? And I feel as though Rodgers made a very schoolboy error in terms of he saw the space and how it was exploited, and especially our press. Like, we had the same build-up structure in terms of a 2-4-4, right? And so for me, it was like, you should have expected this. We saw it last week. Why did you go with it again? I mean, I'm not complaining. It helps us. We're 2-0 up for that very reason. But I just didn't see that discourse on the timeline. And sure, they got back into the game, but that was because they've added people into midfield really to stretch the game. And we basically closed the block for a bit until, like you said, Odegaard came on, and we were able to kind of stretch our feet ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, but as you said, it was very similar to the Villa game, because we started off quickly. You know, Rodgers made the same mistakes that Dean Smith made, and then after we dominated the first half, he went on and changed from a 3-4-1-2 to a 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2.
Traditional,
same thing. Yeah. And obviously, you know, with a more quality added and game state, obviously they did create some things, but overall I just wasn't really worried. I obviously had a lot of shots. Ramsdale had to make a lot of saves, but outside of the free kick, which is not something that like Mikel can control, it's not giving away that free kick was not really
it's not a managerial thing.
Yeah, it was not exactly. It was not a failure of tactics, and it wasn't even a free kick in my opinion. But I think other than that Barnes 1v1, which Ramsdale came quickly and stifled, I did not really think they had any other major chances. Like, they had some shots from wide, like that Lookman had a chance from wide, but no way Ramsdale was conceding that. There was that Luke Thomas shot.
Chances, yeah.
Like
the Vardy header, etc.
I mean, come on. I didn't even flinch when that happened. Yeah, and everyone is mentioning that Luke Thomas shot. Let's consider that he's a backup left back. He's probably never scored a goal. I mean, I've not researched that, but he's taken a shot from the edge of the box with 3 men in front of him. Okay, it went close, but I'm not really worrying about that. Right? It's like Kolasinac taking a shot from the edge of the box. Like, I'm not really going to say, oh, Mikel did great because Kolasinac created that shot or anything.
So I want to move on to Ramsdale, but first, I've read the funniest comment I think I've ever read in my entire life on BOP. This is quality. I don't know. This is brilliant. This is actually brilliant. A fair play. I'll take that. I'll very much take that, because that is quality. I mean, someone said in one of the group chats I'm in, someone said Asian R9. I'll take that. That's not that big a deal. But I want to get on to Ramsdale, because obviously the whole narrative is, oh my God, it's not sustainable that Ramsdale was your man of the match. He made 8 saves. It's ridiculous. How are you going to sustain this pressure? And I just want to say, you're chatting shit, because the fact of the matter is if a striker goes and scores 2 goals, but the rest of the team is dog shit. Man United this weekend, for example. It's a great performance. Oh my God! But if a goalkeeper has a great performance, you're lucky.
It's getting mad at the postman to bring you your mail. It's
Yeah,
crazy to me.
it's
I don't
ridiculous.
understand it. Like,
If he was
Roy
getting the
Keane.
shots in, they would have complained, but because he's making the saves in the negative, it doesn't make sense. But Ramsdale was great on and off the ball and deserving man of the match. That people love him so much that he even started chanting with the Leicester fans against himself.
that was immense, though, mate. Like,
Like,
I love that.
is
We've needed a
incredible
proper
moment.
shit house that's just a leader in a sense, because, you know, look, what I love about that goalkeeping itself, when you scout goalkeepers, it's very different to other positions because the mental aspect of that game is far more important than anybody on the pitch. We talked about in our scouting pod, goalkeepers are alone. They typically need to make decisions that, you know, are very individual based and in the moment require a strong mentality not to be wavering with your decision making, and he was just absolutely immense all game. And I think his on the ball really got overshadowed, you know, by some people. And I just think the way he was finding Oba between the lines so consistently. Like, when have you seen Oba with a consistent first touch like that? A, but B, when you do look at Ramsdale, he was just finding him and beating the press immensely. You know, we had a great buildup, you know, which we will talk about. But I just think Ramsdale was very key to relieving the pressure. You know, every time that, you know, Leicester tried to press our build-up, you know, Ramsdale would confidently fire it into Oba, and we beat their press very easily. I think we did that. I counted 4 or 5 times on rewatching the game. And, you know, it wasn't just the 2-0. You know, people were saying about our set-piece coach, which shock horror again, Nicholas Jover near post. You know, this is a thing, guys. Like, this is his philosophy on set pieces and corners. We have to start recognizing that it's a plan and it's not, you know, coincidence at this point. But beyond that, that was a big thing of the first half. But I think just really talking about that build-up is very important for understanding why we were able to get out so often, because we struggled against the 3 at the back. So I think it's worth just touching on.
CK, what are your thoughts on Ramsdale today?
I think for him to, again, like for him to turn around and just start chanting against himself at the Leicester fans, just it made them go silent, like they were dumbfounded at what he did. I think like if like all their big chances were saved by Ramsdale, the free kick, the long shot back, I think it was Iheanacho, the Barnes shots 1-on-1, like he was making some big saves that were needed at that moment in time. And he did the same thing that he does all the time, is where he pauses and just holds the ball for as long as you can, because you need someone to put their foot on the, because Odegaard finally was the guy to put his foot on the ball and then calm down our team, because against Palace and against Villa, we needed someone to put their foot on the ball and say, like, let's calm down and start moving it slowly again.
Can I just push back really quickly on that? Because I've heard that on the timeline, but I just want to push back really quickly on that, because look, when Odegaard did get introduced, I don't know, like I was following it online. For me, he didn't have much of an impact, and it wasn't until Aubameyang turned that game for me. What do I mean by that? That red card incident, then his half volley got us out of this rut of them clearly dominating possession, because I felt they dominated from the 45 to maybe, you know, the 70th minute, around that mark. And that was roughly when, you know, Johnny Evans, you know, did that really stupidity in terms of, you know, bringing Oba down. Let's not get into the consistency of the refereeing in the Premier League, because that's a horror show.
He gives a red card.
Yeah, but I just felt that impetus changed. It changed the mood. And then Aubameyang went on to have 2 really quick fire chances. And to be fair, look, when we did get the ball, Odegaard made excellent decisions in the final third. It was 100% a big reason that we were able to kind of get a couple more chances. But for me, it was all Oba in terms of him attacking that line, coming deep, offering the half volley 30 seconds later. And then I think 2 minutes later, he had a far post set piece run that, you know, Schmeichel made an excellent save, you know, at the far post. Like, he was due a goal for those 3 moments. And for me, I think that's really what changed the narrative in terms of them being able to put themselves on the ball. And of course, Odegaard, when he's there, he's making the right decision. So that's not something, you know, you can hate on, because, you know, he did excellently there. Something that he didn't do against Villa, very secure on the ball in the final.
And he gave guys like Gabriel, because eventually Leicester started pressing high after our goal. And he gave guys like Gabriel the option to just give it to him and he will get rid of it straight to Oba. And those things we didn't have last season. And but in general, that is a big impact on the team and how we create chances and keep the ball. Because last season, I don't want to say the guy's name, but if he passed back to him in that situation, it caused us issues throughout the whole season that even nearly got us knocked out of Europe. But Ramsdale was deserved man of the match for me against Leicester.
Did you
Right.
see how annoyed the Leicester fans were when you know that thing where it's either Ben White or Gabriel give Ramsdale the ball and then Ramsdale just does that long kick. Did you see how annoyed the Leicester fans were when we were trying that like each and every time?
Straight out of
It was so funny each and every time, man.
it was perfect. Ball stopper.
All right, so I think CK has a visual for this, so we're just going to talk about the build-up now because, yeah, there we go. For me, it's good to see we're settled on our build-up, which is very, very good to see. I don't really. There we
That's
go.
the wrong
So,
game.
so wrong game. We'll get there. We'll get there.
This one,
Yeah, here we go. So, if people can't see it, so it's basically a 2-4-4, which can advance into a 2-3-5, which is what we've settled on now, especially against these three at the back teams that have morphed into four at the back, because it's happened 2 games in a row now. We've had Villa and now Leicester, who've decided to go 3 at the back, realize they can't handle the heat, and then go, okay, we'll go 4 at the back and sort of have a moment or two, but don't really threaten us that much. What I wanted to say about the build-up especially is it's good to see that Mikel is a bit more flexible, because usually he would be insisting that on the left we'd be bombing up, and Tavares, even though that he was making these bombing runs through the lines, he wasn't necessarily just going high. He was coming deep, he was advancing the play, and he was not going, okay, I need my fullback up. Stop! Why are you pulling back? It's good to see some versatility in our fullbacks, which was very good. I think Nick wants to go on about. So I'll let Nick take over from what I was saying.
Yeah. Just want to say, I want to really mention what you mentioned about the left back, because it's made me so happy, because like it's not even, obviously we saw that a lot last season, but even this season, the first few games, every time in the build-up, Tierney would basically be playing as a left winger, and like obviously he's quick, he has a great cross, he's explosive, all that. I get it, and obviously he did have some success in that role. But at the end of the day, what happened when in the build-up the left back was playing as a winger? It just created a huge hole in the left side. And that meant that one of the midfielders had to drop in, usually Xhaka or even Lokonga, and then that would in turn create a hole in the middle, and then the left winger ESR would have to drop in all the way back, and it would just create a huge imbalance, and it would be very asymmetrical system. And I like asymmetrical systems, but like I think it did lead to at times a lot of people were complaining about our team being left-sided biased in the build-up and in the final third. And I think the fact that our system has been a bit more symmetric recently, I think it has helped in terms of being more balanced in our chance creation. And even though I know all of you hate calling this a 4-4-2. You with Lacazette in the team, all of you want to call it 4-3-1. I do see some similarities with the 4-4-2. I'm sorry, and it's the split strikers, because Oba is playing more so towards the left, and you see a dynamic where Oba is closer to ESR and Lacazette's closer to Saka, and I do see the center forward partnership thing being split. Obviously, Lacazette is playing a different role, a bit deeper, but I think I like that dynamic. Obviously, it's not easy to replicate it with Odegaard, but I would like. I'm not sure who else can do Lacazette's job. Whether it's someone, I don't know. I'm not sure if Balloon can do it. I don't know.
I think he can.
About probably, yeah, but he likes the left side more, just like Oba. Yeah, I'm talking about next season when Lacazette leaves. I would like to have an option there.
A second striker option, yeah. The reason why. For me, anyway, I don't know about George and CK, but for me, anyway, the reason why I call it a 4-2-3-1 is because of the rotation. It's not like they're both pushing. there's a rotation there that you're having one drop, one come up, one drop, one come up. In times, especially if you saw the Crystal Palace game, when Laka came on, there were times where Alba would be the link-up play and drop deep, so Laka would bomb on and vice versa. And the rotation there is why I can't just really go out and say 4-2-2, because usually in a 4-4-2 you'll have your strikers split and go wide and try and attack the channels along to create the overloads with your winger or your central midfielder and create triangles to move on and create opportunities, or create the triangles, drift in and be on the end of a cross. So with this, it's more of a rotation and you're having players drop deep and go higher and interchange their roles.
Look, at the end of the day, mate, like I'm going to maybe be very simplistic here. I think we do zones over formations, and we must start to do these things. So regardless of what you might think, I think it's a little man, large man interaction, whether it's deep or not. Who really cares? I think the big thing for me on the build up right now is just explaining why a 2-4-4 gives you numerical superiority in the back line. I think that's the very key here. And in the preview, we did highlight that Samari would be their lead progression man. And of course, James Maddison would drop in to try to offer up that option to squeeze. And, for me, the two biggest players right now that actually solved this big problem was Aubameyang and Lacazette. They were very, very crucial to us beating the press. What do I mean by that? So Lacazette very smartly went over towards the left where James Maddison was, knowing that Boubakary Soumaré would follow him in because they felt that he was our out ball. When you have a 2-4-4, you basically have an extra man, and Ramsdale is that extra man, but so is Gabriel. You're never facing more than one player 1v1, and that's the change that a 2-4-4 does against basically these variations of a 3-4-3. That's tactically what it gives you. So if you do look at the bottom of your screen here, you basically have three players at the back with, your two is Gabriel White, but Ramsdale's an extra body here. And that's really what adds an extra player when you're facing your eights, which are basically Maddison and Tielemans that come up, and then your twin strikers with your one fullback that wants to press higher. And so really what you're seeing here, there's 5 players against 6 constantly. And what you're looking up at the back end of the pitch, where it's not really that important, is less players. And the big thing is Soumaré was going to be tracking Lacazette all day. And so when he did go to the left, that left a big hole in the center of the pitch. That's the out ball. Whether it was, Tavares that was bombing on and able to find Oba in that space, which was very important, but Oba dropping deep and, Ramsdale firing between the lines, that was the space because Tielemans is really poor in defensive transition. And this is what we said. So when we start looking at building through the left, it was a very calculated tactical decision to draw out Soumaré and Maddison on the left-hand side, knowing that there was space on the right, or rather our left-hand side. And so that's where the out ball was. And there was so many times that Aubameyang was left free, but also Tavares would receive a quick switch and then he would pass inside. And I just think that combo was what tore them apart. And, this buildup really is the reason that, we were able to cut free and break those lines so often. So, yeah, again, I think Tavares was very important. Lacazette was very important as a decoy runner. He did kind of the opposite effect of Villa, where at Villa, he stuck on Luiz in order to do more of a man-marking job. But here, his responsibility was to draw out Soumaré. His responsibility was to vacate that center so that Aubameyang had space. And, we could find ESR in the hole down there on the left half space. So I think that was really important in terms of the build-up and just understanding for people that when you do go 2-4-4 versus your traditional 3-4-3, even though I know it's technically a little bit different with the twin strikers, but the point why you do that as a coach is just to add more players in your half, get a numerical superiority on the opposition, try to find the extra man, and that extra man space is behind Tielemans. That's where it is. And so we just mercifully found him very consistently. A big part to Ramsdale, sure. But like you said, Nick, Tavares was excellent in terms of changing up our ability to go in and out, on that side. And, he would receive and fire it into Oba or dribble himself in an underlap very, very often. And, that was where the space was, which is what we highlighted on the preview. Tielemans wasn't going to track that run. And so you had to attack that space. And I think we did it brilliantly. That really was why that first 20 minutes was so successful.
Yeah, for me,
and it was one thing. It was also kind of similar. Yeah, it was also kind of similar to what we talked about last week with ESR pulling out Calvin Phillips against Leeds with the one you talked about, George, Lacazette and Sumare. So yeah, go on,
Yeah.
Coran.
Yeah, sorry. So I just wanted to talk before we move on to positives and negatives about this game. I want to mention Tielemans and I want to mention Harvey Barnes because a lot of the talk is about how, oh, in the second half we just let them roam free and they created chances and they made sure that we what we actually looked like going in that second half, because Yuri was, he's a very, very good player. He's technically secure. He's someone that can see a ball, and he's someone that can create chances. But the thing is, if you want to look at someone like Tielemans, you want to use someone like Barnes. What we gave them is ahead of us, in front of us. We gave them space. So you gave Yuri space in. If you give Yuri space within your block, so in that between the second line of your block and the two strikers, and you give him that little bit of space, he can find the ball. But the fact is, we had 2 blocks of 4 behind him, and every time that he found the ball, Gabriel would track someone like Lookman, or White would track Harvey Barnes. And yes, Harvey Barnes had a good couple of opportunities and he was able to create. But the fact of the matter is, there was never a time, as Nick said earlier, that I really felt. I think that only one that he's right. The only time I felt a bit curious about what was going to happen is that Harvey Barnes won one with Ramsdale, and Ramsdale performed swimmingly. So, I think it was something that we had a specific game plan how to counteract that in that second half. And I feel like Mikel's maturing into realizing that he doesn't have to do things so expansively. He can try, and he doesn't have to be, because people have got onto him for being too pragmatic. So he's tried to exactly. Ramsdale has obviously helped his build up, because if you look at the build up, you can see Ramsdale trying to get it quickly out and quickly into midfield, so we can break quickly. But what I was trying to say is that if you have a low block against teams, it's not necessarily that you're admitting that you need to have the block. It's you can actually look and see our block and see we are trying to compress the space where they're good at, which is behind you. If they were a team that was very possession heavy and didn't have runners to get in behind, we would have pushed up. They have such good runners behind that we dropped low. And it sure, Yuri had a few balls and Barnes had a couple of chances, but So we're going to talk about the press, because the press is also very important in terms of what we were doing this game, because you can see going forward that the last couple of games have been very, very efficient with our press. So I'll let Nick go on, because he's been, I think he's wanted to talk about the press. I think he sent us this actually. So Nick.
Yeah, the diagrams are mine, but yeah. So the press was very similar to Villa once again, because Leicester built up with a very similar structure. It was essentially a 3-5-2, because Maddison was number 10, dropped quite deep. And I thought what was kind of interesting was that Saka usually would be on the left wing back, but he was a little bit more inside, a little bit more in field, and he was tracking Maddison when he was dropping, which I liked it, because it basically meant that we did, because if instead we pulled out Partey, that would leave a big gap for Iheanacho and Vardy to exploit. And also Luke Thomas, the wing back, is not really an attacking threat, as I mentioned earlier. So I wasn't really concerned about leaving Thomas and Vardy in a 2v2 with White and Tomiyasu. I thought we had that matchup there. And also, as I mentioned earlier, as you can see, there is no one close to the wide center backs for Leicester, because both of them, Amarte and Soyuncu, are quite poor on the ball. And Soyuncu especially is also right-footed, playing on the left, and that did lead to a few turnovers, especially because when we forced the Leicester build-up wide, Soyuncu was on the touchline and he couldn't fire that ball inside like Gabriel. He had to turn and do it with his right foot. And we did have a couple of turnovers that way. As we saw against Villa, Lacazette was on the number 6. That time it was on Luiz, but this time was on Sumare, and he did an excellent job. And and also the other thing I've highlighted there is that Tielemans, he was dropping deep a lot, and Lokonga was following him, and it's something we've seen in the past as well with the 4-4-2 turning in sort of to a 4-1-5, which usually we saw Xhaka doing that, pushing forward alongside to follow one of the dropping 8s for the other team. So that worked well because even when Iheanacho dropped in Lokonga's space, Gabriel is very adept at charging out of the backline, and he did. There were a couple of situations in which he did intercept the ball, and he did engage in a duel with Iheanacho and won the ball. And overall, I think we did a great job. And Karan, you talked about the low block. I think it's one thing that is not mentioned about enough about Arteta. He's fantastic at drilling low blocks. Like, I'm not sure there's who is better. Like
Simeone.
Probably two.
That's it.
Yeah. In the Premier League, I was talking about, but yeah, probably Tuchel is also a low block is better, but that's in a 5, which it's different. But I think we also saw Arteta have a terrific low block with a 5. I think going 4-4-2 low block requires a bit more drilling. But yeah, he's fantastic, and obviously not everyone loves Simeone. He's not everyone's cup of tea. So when people say that Arteta is like a modern Simeone, I think it's a positive. Some people take it as a negative, but I like it. As of now, he's shown the appetite to be sort of like a Simeone kind of manager, but with a positional play instilled.
Yeah.
So that's great. Maybe in the future we'll see him go into more of a Pep route with sustaining more pressure and pressing high all the time. But at the moment, I think with the personnel that we have, I think having the ability to drop into a low block, it's very good. And also the one thing is that it also helps hide some of the deficiencies of defensive players. So for example, in a low block, you don't someone like Tavares doesn't have to go too much 1v1.
And Lokonga.
Out wide, Lokonga as well, and also Gabriel at times, as we saw against Palace and that Benteke goal, and we've seen some other times as well. When we play Haaland, he's a bit too aggressive at times, charging out. He leaves some space, and he's good, but I think he can improve. But when engaging 1v1 in wide areas, so I think going in a low block, I just think was perfect. There were a couple of moments where we lost our concentration, in that Barnes chance and in that Thomas chance, but I think it was a fantastic low block, and it's not always pretty to watch, but it's very effective.
I was just really excited about this press because, we highlighted in the preview, and anytime that we can stroke our ego to see what we predicted and it happens is a chance that I will take. But guys, just looking at this, right, we had highlighted in the preview himself, Lokonga was going to be the most improved player and he needed to be in this game. And it was his tracking of Yuri Tielemans who was going to be the free man, because we had anticipated that, Madison and Samari would be man marked. I don't think we had anticipated quite Saka doing that role. I thought it would be a little bit more of the twin strikers that would follow, but it made sense. That left-hand side was held on lock, and they freed Partey because there was the threat of Jamie Vardy 1v1 with Ben White. There was that threat. And so when you have Saka basically on Madison and, Lacazette on Samare in a 1v1 scheme, they're basically knocking out all their progression because we don't rate Soyuncu. And, that was really the case because he's really poor in build-up. And it's, they basically relied on Yuri Tielemans to drop in, provide that extra man, but he just wasn't able. And it was because Lokonga was excellent tracking his run, and it allowed Gabriel to step up properly. One of the big things of the past game where Lokonga struggled in these 3 at the back systems, mainly Brighton, he wasn't very good in terms of tracking and knowing when to follow and when not to. And that meant that Gabriel didn't feel comfortable stepping up in his defensive line. And so that battle with Iheanacho and Gabriel, who was going to be their reference point when Tielemans couldn't progress the ball, was going to be very, very important in terms of springing Jamie Vardy. And we were just clamping down that access. Because remember, if you guys had joined us on the preview, we basically said they would attempt to work from the left to the right to hit Iheanacho and then release Jamie Vardy. And we were just excellent with Lokonga following Tielemans. We had locked the left with a man marking scheme. And these two, Gabriel and Lokonga, were phenomenal, cutting the out ball, and they just That's how we suffocated them. So when people look at this 2-0 and our press, it wasn't just structurally. It was how some people were 1v1, others were shadow marking, we call it kind of in coaching, where there was a little bit of a pack between multiple players forcing space. That is just why I was so excited about this press, because for me it showed a level of variability that we didn't see in the others. Villa was much more Lacazette being a really big part of this press, and of course we shadow boxed with other people, but it was mainly Lacazette just following Luiz. This was a lot more advanced. This was a lot more calculated in terms of how we cut off those chances. And look, once we went 2-0 up, guys, why do we need to press like this and afford space to Jamie Vardy, who has killed us in countless scenarios? So for me, this is why the press worked. This is where the spacing was, and why we chose to kind of man mark on the left, but block much more space on the right for Leicester, our left. And that is why, for me, this worked so well, because that space of Tielemans was where, we were going to kill them, but also where they were going to get killed in terms of how they wanted to progress, how they wanted to play. And, it was so bad that they had to bring on Barnes again to basically overload on their left, because they have, much better players on the left, in terms of their progression. They really do have a bias towards there. So, I was just very happy. And for me, I think that's the biggest reason that the press was so different to Villa a little bit, where I think it was the same structure, 4-4-2, but it was much more unique to Leicester. And that's why I got excited. It left Partey free to really control his space, communicate with Ben White, who had a phenomenal game as well, by the way. Ben White, I think he deserves his plaudits, because a lot of people question him and this kind of deal. Lokonga as well. He was probably the most improved player. The fact that Lokonga was on it in this game shows his mentality and his ability to take on a poor performance and turn it into a good one. So, and Ben White dealing with Jamie Vardy, who, by the way, we haven't historically dealt with, for really his whole time in the Premier League. He's been excellent against us. He always scores, and I just think he was so quiet. I haven't seen Jamie Vardy that quiet against us really ever. And I think it was much, of course, structure gives a big part of that. But, we cut off that out ball to him. But at the same token, Ben White did excellent in terms of being aggressive and making sure he didn't have space and time to open up his legs. So, yay for structure on Arteta, but also individuals who I think were much, much improved. I think this is why we're seeing us start so quick. And then we just had to control the space at the end of that game. So, I think that was the story of the first half for me. You can't not praise the save from Aaron Ramsdale. I don't know if it was like, exceptional, that I've never seen that before, but I thought it was a very, very good save at an excellently timed period. Going 2-1 down to Leicester is a very different game, in my opinion.
Well, 2-1 up. So
2-1 up in the 43rd minute. I was just saying, it would have been 2-1 down in the 43rd minute, not in 2-1 up, sorry. In the 43rd minute.
Not 2-1 down. Before I go to CK and Nick, because I want to hear from, CK and Z, sorry, before about what's going on with this game, I want to just quickly mention about Tielemans quickly, because what people are saying about how he was making great balls. I was saying earlier about how him and Barnes were using space well, but we were forcing them with this press into making hero balls. We were trying. Tielemans is someone who's very technically secure, and he's able to hit a pass. But when you're putting players in positions where they have to take risks to try and create chances and to get out, so that is what I wanted to mention. I'm going to ask Z this, and then CK as well. I want to, because it's a good question. So, guys, how can we dominate games for longer periods? We seem to start well, then struggle in the second half. So, CK and then Z, have at it, always.
Well, for me, our players, I've said it, like our players are very young and just not used to the intensity for 90 minutes. So, for now, no matter how good we play, the players just physically won't be able to sustain it for 90 minutes. And I think earliest we'll see it is maybe the second half of the season, where the players by then will probably a lot of the players will get used to it, because we're a very young team, and this is Emil's first Prem full season, or Saka's second or third proper full season. These guys are still very young and not physically used to it, and our team is just still new. this team that we're seeing now has only played 7 games together, and as a unit, these guys haven't lost yet, so you don't know how they'll bounce back from that. But I think these guys, like the Ramsdales, the Whites, because the last game, Leicester, the one who cast out earlier was probably Lacazette, and then we lost our jewels by far from like the 45th to the 65th minute. So that's when from the 60th to the 70th minute, our team just gasses out, and that's when the subs become important. And I feel like this whole season, Mikel's subs have really helped our players, because I think he himself has noticed that certain players just gas out after a certain time, so you need to refresh it. But for me, I think later on in the season you'll see a change, but for right now we won't sustain pressure for 90 minutes. What do you think, Z?
Yeah, I mean, I asked this question to Corin and George because they are the medical experts as well. So I was like, I wanted to know exactly like why can't they press for that long? And obviously, it's down to their age. Obviously, they're quite young, and some of them are like, I think some of them exert a bit too much pressure, and they don't know how to maintain it during the game. And another reason is because they're probably just not used to it. And it's something very similar to how Liverpool. How Klopp actually managed Liverpool when he started managing them. In the beginning, they used to stop very, very quickly. Actually, if you actually look at his first season and a bit, his Liverpool team used to wipe teams out in the first 20-30 minutes, and then after that, his team used to cramp up, and Klopp kept on saying, it's just one of those things that he needs to be used to. And then obviously in the following season, we saw Liverpool not pressing so much, but they were pressing very smartly. And so I feel like this is something that Arteta is probably wanting to do, where he's trying to test the limits of these players and seeing the capacity. And once he knows like the full potential of these players, I think he'll try and maintain it, and ensure that the pressing is done in a more of a effective way, and so that it's maintained for the entire 90 minutes. And obviously once those players are used to it, yeah, for sure, CK, I think these players will probably have a bit more intensity going further along in the season, probably around February, March time, for sure.
And
There's a factor of their age, guys, but just like fitness wise, they don't. I mean, Arteta's critiqued the fitness of the squad just in general, and in fact, we have some stats, that back up the fact that he's tried to improve the fitness of this team over the years. I think it's a little bit combined of both youth in terms of making them realize their physical potential, but just lastly, upgrading the physical quality of this team, adding a little bit more transition players, which I think we all can agree in the midfield we weren't able to really secure based on our summer spending, which is fine. We're just waiting for that real quality, in my opinion, in midfield and that rebuild in midfield to really exert that sustained pressure. Just who we have right now, we have a couple good players, but we don't have, in my opinion, the number of transition players that we need to really control that for 90 minutes. In my opinion, I think the best that we can do are these spurts. And until we get a player that, we can really help release Thomas Partey, that's going to struggle to be a thing really for this season.
Do you think also, do you think it could be just because of the lack of fans last season that, there wasn't much intensity, and compared to now, like every game is like full, and these players are having to exert a lot more pressure. So could it be just a mental thing as well?
Yeah, it could be. I think for the league in general. I mean, the idea of home court advantage and was not a thing during COVID, and so there's a certain aspect when those tides turn for teams that they capitalize more. That was definitely a case here. But I think just in terms of Arsenal specifically, if you look at our midfield, I wouldn't describe it as the most athletic. It can be better. I really just look at Partey as really that leader in transition, and Emile, again, he's the one that while young, really needs to develop a little bit more physically still. And so you don't have more than 2 players that are just elite transition wise. And so you're going to struggle to control games when, you don't have that in addition to how young the squad is, because it is true. Like they're very young. A lot of them in terms of our starting, leaders in their final thirds and even positions, they're still yet to hit their physical peak, let alone their footballing peak. No, they're not. And so, yeah, like that is a factor. But again, I think the midfield needs to be a little bit more athletic, and we're going to get there. We just need to wait for the quality to catch up.
And lastly, for me, on the sustaining this for 90 minutes, I just think we get into the 45th to 60th minute where someone's not putting their, or no one in the team is marking their territory and putting the foot on the ball. Because the longer you keep the ball, the less running you're going to have to do, because the ball does the moving for you, as well as off the ball movement. But the more you have the ball, the more the other team are moving around and wasting their energy. So I think the better players or midfielders in technical quality you get in the midfield and front line, the better you do keep the ball, and then therefore press less and then save more energy.
Yeah, so I think we'll do some final thoughts, but I wanted to get into what's happened in the last couple of days, which is Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked. It's been, he lost the game, and then the news was starting to come out, and then today he's been sacked, and now we seem to be getting Antonio Conte at Spurs, and I am. So that we're looking at a Conte Spurs. Are you worried? Because I know I'm not.
Nick, you go.
I have no idea, to be honest, because so yeah, I laughed at the comment there. Thanks, mate. Yeah. So obviously, I think I'm not sure it's a great appointment for the long term. In fact, I'm sure it is a horrible appointment for the long term. However, I don't really care about that, as I expect, given our current project, I expect for us to be well ahead of them from next season onwards. For us to be in a place where it doesn't matter if Spurs have like the best manager, we'll be ahead of them based on quality and structure and everything else. However, in terms of the short term, I would say I'm kind of worried, yes, because he's a very good coach, and he has been in places where he's had an instant impact. He's a top coach, and he's certainly a huge upgrade on Nuno Espirito Santo. I think the X factor here in the situation is Harry Kane. If Harry Kane is engaged and healthy, because he doesn't really seem very fit right now, I think they're going to be good, definitely, because they do have a lot of pieces that would suit a Conte team. Obviously, they're weak at the back. They don't really have a good number 6 or like any number 6 in the roster. And, but I think they do have a fantastic strike force, which will do well, as we've seen Conte do with Lukaku and Lautaro. They do have good wing backs. I think we could definitely see a resurrection of Matt Doherty, because we've seen Conte do well with much worse fullbacks or wing backs in the past. Reguilon would be good. And Dombele is also another X factor, because he's supremely talented, but I'm not sure if he's going to get on with Conte purely based on, there have been reports of him having pure attitude and being in poor shape. And I think there is a chance that, for me, there's a chance that either he's like one of their best players under Conte, or that he's the first player shown out the door. Well, actually second, because Dele Alli exists. I don't know. I think there's potential for it to go wrong for us. I think if they hit the ground running, they could definitely challenge for top 4. However, without his signings, without a preseason, I'm inclined to, for now, just say that I'm not very worried. I would still be more worried with United, just because of the quality.
Your latter point is what's totally clear here, because for me, with with Antonio Conte, again, guys, like, his press is a huge portion of why he's successful, and that press is really integrated in preseason, particularly with the fitness levels. That Spurs team is not fit. Even if he's going to become very compact, he can't change the athletic profile of who he's got. And so his system, in terms of how he's going to deploy it, is going to be very, very difficult. I'm clearly not worried as I'm looking at it now. You look at their defenders, they're really poor in defensive 1v1 isolation. Even the ones that they have, Dyer, Romero, I think despite a compact system, they're going to really struggle to defend the spaces that they leave. And for me, while Doherty maybe gets a revival, I still think that's a weakness on the right wing back area. Players that I think will thrive is Son and Kane. You have that little large that he'll definitely exploit for me. And I think Lucas Moura will play a very big part in terms of being an outlet for him as well. Look, there is a lot of good things to like about that Spurs team with a Conte setup, but for me, fundamentally, they don't have the midfield that is athletic enough to be in transition the way that Conte teams love, and their back three are really, really poor in defensive isolation, and that won't change unless you got personnel. So for me, they need at least another two center backs as well as another midfielder in there, and probably an upgraded right wing back to really make that system sing. And for really right now, coming in the middle of the season, look, he's an elite coach at what he does. Make no mistakes about it. Like Conte, for what he does and that system, he is absolutely elite. My issue is I don't know if the players he has available really suit that system right now. There's a couple good parts for sure, but really the crux of that system requires defensive solidity and 1v1 kind of competency in isolation. He's gonna shorten the distances. You're not gonna see that space in the press that Nuno had, that 4-3-3 awful space. It's not gonna happen. But I agree with Nick. I think Ndombele is the second person out of there. After Dele Alli. But that's gonna be huge, right? Again, and for me, I debated Curran with you. It's probably going to be that 3-4-1-2, and I have this sneaky feeling he puts Kane in that number 10 in a sense, and has more up top with Son. And I have a feeling he'll try to use Kane in that area because they just don't have somebody that he likes there. I don't know who he's going to put. And he kind of did something similar, at Inter Milan with basically having somebody drop in, mainly Barella, who is able for that overloads. They don't have a Barella that can overload wide.
They have Skip.
Well, no, I mean, I think one player who we've all written off but could do that job is Lo Celso. But I'm not sure if he's up to the task, but I think he has the quality. But like it's gone so horribly wrong for him in England, but that I don't trust him. But I think he could do the job. And also another guy who's not a midfielder at all, but I think he has the tools to be exactly that, is Brian Hill. I think he would be as a third, as like not a double pivot or anything, but if they play like a similar system to Inter, where like it's more of a 3-1-4-2, which for them to do that, they would need a number 6. I think initially, he's going to try Harry Winks, and it's not going to work. So, but they'll probably sign someone. I think they do that system. They could use like Brian Hill as the third midfielder, more of a creative type. And I think Ndombele, if he gets along with Conte, I think he can be a very good piece for them as the third midfielder. But eventually they will have to sign someone like maybe an Awar or a Brandt type, someone like that, who's available for cheap and can do a creative job for them.
Before CK and Zico, because I do want their opinion on this, I'm just going to quickly say this. With me, I'm not worried about Spurs. I'm not scared of Spurs. For me, if you look at Antonio Conte, he's always looked at his jobs and taken his jobs at the beginning of summers, and there's a good reason for that. 1, so he can get his players. 2, so he can drill them into submission and make sure he gets the players that he wants. He does not have time or the ability to get his players or drill these teams into submission like he usually does. He doesn't have it. He only has he has to get here, and he has to hit this ground running, and he has to get back to this weekend and somehow figure a way to get a win with these players that are down on their luck. They're not fit, and they're not disciplined. I mean, they're players that are not committed to the cause. You look at players like Dele Alli, who I think he's just given up on his career personally. Like, he's just there to be there. He doesn't look engaged in football right now. And if you look at players, I can go on with the Steven Bergwijn, like people, like you can just keep going. You can go on with that squad. Giovanni Lo Celso, Harry Winks, like these are players that just seem abjectly sort of like you can't see these players progressing in terms of what you need to get to where Ahmed is saying
on the
top
ball
4
on their day. That's
on their day.
I don't see a big enough transition. What again? 3 at the back. What you must have is you're going to keep the distances tight, but you need somebody that can be aggressive in terms of their press, but also meeting people wide in isolation. And I think that's really the biggest glaring holes of Spurs as a whole. Forget system and what you want. and the fact that they maybe don't have the center backs, but as a whole, they aren't aggressive enough in terms of their running in midfield. They aren't secure enough in defensive 1v1 isolated chances. And so I think that will be exposed in a 3 at the back. If you're not doing those things, it will be exposed. And I think that's a tool issue, less so of a Conte criticism, because it isn't. He's an excellent coach. He knows what he needs and he does it ruthlessly. But I just don't think the tools he has, is really, really good. And, in Jan, people saying that they have a window. Guys, when have you seen premiums not be paid in January and them getting their first choice? Again, I think I would be much more scared of Conte in the summer when he had his opportunity to have a preseason. He had an opportunity to really buy the players and bet them in to that 3 at the back system. I think right now you get premiums on player in January, and I don't remember the last time many stars left in January. Of course, we have our Oba scenario, which is very, very specific to, selling Giroud. But it's not common to have big players leave big teams. So we'll see.
Right. So before we do go, I want to answer this question because Mush did ask me to answer this. So CK, you can take this. So if we do score early, how do you see us? We'd like to score early, but how do you see us doing well in matches when we don't get that early goal? Also, how do you see us doing against a stubborn low block?
I think since April, we've been able to create against low blocks very easily, especially at home. Because I think at home we're a totally different team than away now, especially with the fans back. Even though we were good versus Leicester, and even if we don't get that first goal, I think for those periods where we do sustain pressure recently, we've been creating a lot of chances and a lot of clear-cut ones actually. So then it has just come down to our players finishing, and recently Emil and Oba seem to be ruthless in their finishing. The only one, Saka and Pepe, really are the ones that haven't been as ruthless in their finishing, with Pepe getting more chances than Saka. But I feel like in the periods of our domination, we always create a lot of chances, and then it just comes down to efficiency. And it has improved somewhat, but our efficiency isn't good anyways. But that's what I think on the low block.
Sorry.
Oh.
We got a transformer on the loose.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, I'm just going to take this because someone's posted something twice here. So it seems to be very sort of imperative that we get to him. So we'll go for this. I'll take this one. So Conte goes for castaways and not the players he had the high stocks. That's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is he takes players that are castaways and he draws them into within an inch of their lives in the summer and preseason. So he has plenty of stars at Inter as well. So people like Barella, people like Lukaku, who even though was doing on down his luck, is still a very decent striker. He has Lautaro Martinez. He has players that are very, very good throughout the pitch. So I think this is rubbish.
Hakimi. He doesn't always go for castaways. Hakimi was one of the best right backs in the world. But with Conte, like for me, I'm not scared of him just because he doesn't have, as you said, the player that covers spaces, and I think he'll get tired of Ndombele quickly because he won't keep the distances tight in midfield for him the way he'd need to, because generally he'd give a player with that much offensive ability the license to not defend as much like he did with Hazard. But with Hazard, he had Marcus Alonso doing the work down the flank for him, but he doesn't have a player who tracks runners on the wings as well as Alonso.
No, the issue though is, Chris, people are making again these simple correlation things. Yes, it's absolutely true that coaches can come in and have an impact, but you need to look at what the weaknesses of that squad are, and just fundamentally, if you're looking to buy two very strong center backs, which I think we can all agree they need more center backs. If you want one, maybe they don't need two. You need a defensive leader that, for me, I worry about that back line in 1v1 chances. Then if you look at the midfield, Conte has had Kante as well at Chelsea. He had Barella. He had transition midfielders that were very tight and aggressive. Can you name one player, bar Skip, who has potential? But is there anybody to the level of that midfield that they have a midfield general that can do that with the spaces? They really don't have it. And so for me, that's going to be the issue in addition to their center backs. I don't think he's walked into a job where he didn't have at least one big defensive leader that he could rely on and at least one big midfielder that he could rely on. I think he's shown a very good ability to coach players from nothing into something, absolutely. But he hasn't shown an ability for me to change systems. He's very set on that 3 at the back. There's different variations of it, but he hasn't changed systems. So for me, a plan B is lacking. And if you're going to play that, he needs very specific profiles that for me, in January, very tough to get. I maintain, I don't think January is a market that you buy starters. It's typically where you buy stopgaps and you fill emergency gaps in your team. It's very rare that you can buy starters that last you for your rebuild, so to speak.
On that note, I think we'll call it. But the thing is, we're going to have a lot of content this week because we're going to go more into the Spurs stuff eventually, but we're going to have a space this week, I think Wednesday, on the top 4 race, that not United, not Spurs. We're going to talk about teams like Leicester, West Ham, teams that are around that game. We're not just going to go, because I know people are going, oh, you're just talking about United too much. No, we'll talk about the entire top 4 race as a whole. We'll have some people on. If you want to come on, DM me on Twitter, and we'll see what we can do. But for now, please like, comment, subscribe, follow Nick at NS Football, follow the guys at George VAFC, at PrevArsenalZ, and at Pure CKK. My name's Karan. And my at's at KaranBOP. It's nice having Nick on. We'll have him more on as much as we can because he's a good guy to have on. So thank you, Nick. But for now, thank you. No problem, man. But for now, thank you guys, and see you in a bit. Peace, guys.